You did something. Maybe it was small. A lie that slipped out too easily, a promise you broke without anyone noticing, a moment of cowardice when courage was called for. Maybe it was bigger. The world moved on. No one caught you, no one punished you, no consequences fell from the sky. And that's when your court convened. Judge, jury, and executioner, they're all you. The trial that never ends, the sentence that keeps getting extended, the punishment that no one can see, but everyone can feel radiating from your exhausted bones. You won't let yourself rest. You won't let yourself be happy. You won't let yourself off the hook because someone has to pay, and if the universe won't collect, then you will. But here's what you don't understand yet. You're not serving justice. You're serving something much darker, and it's been eating you alive from the inside out. You check your reflection and see guilt written in the lines around your eyes. You achieve something good and immediately start calculating how you don't deserve it. You laugh at a friend's joke and catch yourself. How dare you enjoy this moment when you haven't paid enough yet? Sleep comes harder now. Your mind reviews the evidence nightly, building its case against you. You've become prosecutor and defendant in a trial that has no jury, no rules of evidence, no statute of limitations. The punishment is exquisite in its precision, not dramatic enough that anyone notices, just a constant low-grade fever of self-loathing that makes everything taste a little bitter, feel a little hollow. You've convinced yourself this is moral. This is what good people do. They hold themselves accountable. They don't let themselves off easy. But what if I told you that a man who was beaten by his master, who lost everything, who owned nothing, understood exactly why you do this to yourself? And why it's the cruelest lie you've ever believed. His name was Epictetus, born into slavery around 55 AD. Crippled by his master, some say deliberately, others say through neglect. He owned nothing, controlled nothing, had no power over his circumstances, and yet he became more free than any emperor who ever lived. Not because he escaped his chains, but because he understood something that you, with all your freedom, all your choices, all your power, have forgotten. He spent years watching people torture themselves for things that were already done, for mistakes that couldn't be undone, for failures that existed only in the past. And he saw that this self-inflicted suffering wasn't justice. It wasn't even punishment. It was slavery of the worst kind. The kind where you hold your own chains, the kind where you are both prisoner and guard, and you never get a day off from either role. Epictetus understood that you're not punishing yourself because you deserve it. You're punishing yourself because you're afraid. Afraid that if you stop, if you forgive yourself, if you let yourself be human, somehow that makes what you did okay. But here's what Epictetus knew that you don't. Suffering doesn't balance any cosmic ledger. Your self-punishment doesn't undo what happened. Your guilt doesn't retroactively make you a better person when you made that choice. Your sleepless nights don't resurrect the trust you broke or heal the person you hurt. You've created a mythology of moral debt, as if the universe operates like a bank, as if pain paid now somehow cancels out pain caused then. But pain isn't currency. Guilt isn't interest on a loan. And the person demanding payment isn't some cosmic judge. It's just you, terrified that if you're not your own prosecutor, you might be a bad person. Convinced that self-hatred is somehow evidence of good character. But think about it. Have you ever met someone who is genuinely kind to others, but cruel to themselves? Have you ever seen self-punishment make anyone more compassionate, more honest, more courageous? Or does it just make them more tired? Epictetus once told his students something that would change everything if you really heard it. When someone does you wrong, do not judge them to be the kind of person who does wrong, but pity them as someone who has false ideas about what is good and bad. But you won't even extend that same pity to yourself. When you make a mistake, you don't see someone with false ideas who deserves compassion. You see a criminal who deserves punishment. When you fail, you don't see a human being learning. You see evidence of your fundamental brokenness. The same mercy you would show a friend who confessed your exact mistake, you refuse to show yourself. The same understanding you would offer someone struggling with your same demons, you withhold from the person in the mirror. Why? Because somewhere along the way, you learned that being hard on yourself was virtuous. That self-compassion was weakness. That forgiveness was something you had to earn from yourself through sufficient suffering. But Epictetus knew better. He knew that this kind of thinking was just another prison, and he had seen enough of those to last several lifetimes. Look at what this internal trial has cost you. Energy that could have gone into making things right, you've spent on making yourself feel wrong. Time that could have been used for growth, you've used for guilt. Love that could have healed relationships, you've withheld from everyone, especially yourself, because you decided you don't deserve it yet. You've become so focused on punishing who you were that you've forgotten to become who you could be. And the cruelest irony, this exhausting self-prosecution has probably made you less likely to do the right thing in the future, not more, because you're running on empty, because you've convinced yourself that you're fundamentally flawed rather than temporarily mistaken. Epictetus watched his students make this mistake over and over. He saw how self-punishment masqueraded as virtue while actually preventing the growth it claimed to promote. Do not be angry with yourself when you make mistakes, he taught, but simply acknowledge them and move forward. Not because mistakes don't matter, but because anger, even at yourself, clouds the very judgment you need to avoid making the same mistakes again. Here's what you haven't realized yet. Your self-punishment is actually a desperate attempt to feel in control. If you can be the one who punishes you, if you can be the one who decides what you deserve, if you can be the judge who never lets you off easy, then maybe somehow you're still in charge of this chaotic moral universe. But Epictetus understood something about control that you're still learning. He knew the difference between what is up to us and what is not. Your past actions, not up to you anymore. They're done, fixed, immutable as stone. The consequences of those actions in the external world, also not up to you. Other people will react how they react. The universe will unfold how it unfolds. But your response to all of this, your judgment about what it means, your decision about who you choose to be going forward, your ability to learn and grow and change, that is up to you. And self-punishment, it's just another way of trying to control what's not yours to control while neglecting what is. You've set up an impossible equation. You'll forgive yourself when you've suffered enough to earn it. But who decides what enough looks like? You do. And you, the prosecutor who never rests, the judge who never shows mercy, you keep moving the goalpost. Last month it was 6 months of guilt. This month it's a year. Next month it'll be forever. Because you've realized that no amount of self-inflicted pain actually changes what happened. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants." The same is true of forgiveness. Peace doesn't come from earning your way out of guilt through sufficient suffering. It comes from understanding that the debt you think you owe was never real in the first place. You don't earn forgiveness by punishing yourself. You don't prove your worth through self-hatred. You don't become a better person by treating yourself like a worse one. These are all stories you've told yourself to avoid the terrifying possibility that you might actually deserve compassion right now, as you are, even with your mistakes and failures and human imperfections. The truth is, you're not afraid that other people won't punish you for what you did. You're afraid that they won't care enough to punish you, that your actions won't matter enough to warrant their anger, and that your failures are so expected, so unremarkable, that no one will even bother to hold you accountable. So, you step in. You become the prosecutor, the angry victim, the disappointed authority figure that you desperately need someone to be. But underneath all of this performance of justice, there's something even deeper. You're afraid that if you stop punishing yourself, if you actually forgive your own humanity, you might discover that you're worthy of love even when you're not perfect. And that's terrifying, because if you're worthy of love with your flaws, then you were worthy of love all along. Which means all this suffering, all this self-punishment, all these years of withholding compassion from yourself, it was all unnecessary. Epictetus understood this fear. He had felt the weight of believing he was fundamentally unworthy, fundamentally broken. And he learned that the fear of our own worthiness is often stronger than our fear of unworthiness. They called him the lame philosopher, Epictetus, walking with his crippled leg through the streets of Rome, teaching students who had every advantage he lacked. And this man, broken in body, scarred by slavery, had something to say about the harm you think you've done to yourself. No one can hurt you without your permission. Do you understand what he's saying? The person hurting you right now, the one who won't let you rest, the one who reviews your failures every night and finds you guilty every morning, that person only has power because you gave it to them. That person is you. Every morning you wake up and choose to put yourself on trial again. Every night you choose to find yourself guilty again. Every moment of every day you choose to believe that you deserve this internal suffering. But you also get to choose something else. Epictetus once told a student who was consumed with guilt, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This includes how you react to your own past. This includes the stories you tell yourself about who you are because of what you've done. You've built your own prison, and you've convinced yourself it's a courthouse. Every day, you drag yourself before this internal tribunal, present the same evidence, hear the same verdict, guilty, and then you serve another day of the sentence you imposed on yourself. But here's what you've forgotten in your quest for perfect justice. Justice isn't about punishment. Real justice is about restoration. It's about acknowledging harm, learning from it, and taking steps to prevent it in the future. Your self-punishment accomplishes none of these things. It doesn't restore what was broken. It doesn't teach you anything you don't already know. And it certainly doesn't prevent future mistakes. It just makes you so exhausted and demoralized that you're more likely to make them. Epictetus saw this clearly. He taught that our job isn't to punish ourselves for being human, but to become more human, more compassionate, more wise, more courageous. Don't explain your philosophy, he said. Embody it. And you can't embody wisdom, compassion, or courage while you're busy embodying your own torturer. Epictetus understood something that modern psychology has only recently rediscovered. There's a difference between I did something bad and I am something bad. Guilt says, I made a mistake and I need to learn from it. Shame says, I am a mistake and I need to be punished for existing. Your internal prosecutor has convinced you that this distinction doesn't matter, that you deserve whatever suffering you can dish out, but it matters enormously. Guilt is about actions. It motivates change, apology, growth. It's temporary and specific. Shame is about identity. It motivates hiding, self-punishment, despair. It's permanent and all-consuming. When Epictetus talked about examining our judgments, this is exactly what he meant. The judgment, I did something wrong, can lead to wisdom. The judgment, I am fundamentally wrong, leads only to suffering. One is an invitation to growth. The other is a life sentence. And you get to choose which story you tell yourself about who you are. You get to choose whether your mistakes define your identity or inform your growth. The man who was literally owned by someone else understood this freedom that you, free in every external way, keep refusing to claim. Calculate the cost. All the mental energy you spend prosecuting yourself, where could that energy go instead? All the emotional bandwidth you use to maintain this internal courtroom. What could you create with that bandwidth? All the love you withhold from yourself until you've earned it through suffering. Imagine if you just gave it to yourself freely, the way you would give it to anyone else you cared about. Epictetus once said, "You are not your body, you are not your possessions, you are not your reputation, you are your capacity for reasoned choice." Every moment you spend in self-punishment is a moment where you're not exercising that capacity. You're not reasoning, you're not choosing, you're just suffering. And suffering by itself creates nothing, teaches nothing, heals nothing. It's just waste heat from a poorly calibrated engine of self-judgment. The people you hurt don't benefit from your suffering. The mistakes you made aren't undone by your guilt. The person you could become isn't emerging from the person you're punishing. You're spending your entire emotional inheritance on a debt that was never real and wondering why you feel so poor. One of Epictetus's students once asked him, "Master, how do we know when we've learned enough from our mistakes? How do we know when it's okay to move forward?" And Epictetus answered, "When you stop making the same mistake, you have learned enough. When you continue punishing yourself after learning, you are making a new mistake." Do you see it? You learned whatever lesson your original mistake had to teach you probably months or even years ago. You know what you did wrong. You know how you would handle it differently now. You know what values you want to honor going forward. Everything after that point, all the continued guilt, all the self-punishment, all the withholding of self-compassion, that's not wisdom. That's just habit. The habit of believing that you're the kind of person who deserves to suffer. The habit of thinking that moral growth requires self-abuse. The habit of confusing cruelty with accountability. But habits can be changed. Epictetus spent his life teaching people to examine their habits of thought, to question the internal voices that claim to serve justice but actually served only suffering. You have power over your mind, not outside events, because, he taught, realize this and you will find strength. This includes power over the mind that prosecutes you. Your guilt has been whispering promises in your ear. If you suffer enough, you'll be purified. If you punish yourself enough, you'll be worthy. If you're hard enough on yourself, you'll become the person you should have been all along. These are the promises of a false prophet. Epictetus knew that suffering doesn't purify anyone, it just wears them down. Punishment doesn't create virtue, it creates resentment, even when the punishment is self-inflicted. Being hard on yourself doesn't make you a better person. It makes you a harsher person. Someone who has practiced cruelty so much that it becomes their default response to human imperfection. First say to yourself what you would be, Epictetus taught, and then do what you have to do. So ask yourself, who do you want to be? Someone who treats mistakes as learning opportunities or as evidence of fundamental unworthiness, someone who responds to human flaws with compassion or with contempt. Because you're becoming whoever you practice being, and if you practice being cruel to yourself, cruelty becomes your nature. If you practice being compassionate to yourself, compassion becomes your nature. The choice isn't just about how you treat yourself, it's about who you become. Here's what you need to hear. You have permission to stop. Permission to lay down the gavel, dismiss the jury, and walk out of the courtroom you built in your mind. Permission to treat yourself with the same kindness you would show anyone else who had done what you did. Permission to be human. Not perfect, not spotless, not retroactively innocent, just human. Epictetus understood that we are all students in the school of life, all learning as we go, and all making mistakes because we don't yet know better. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. He observed, your self-punishment was the beginning of something, but it doesn't have to be the end of everything. You can begin again, not by erasing what happened, not by pretending it didn't matter, but by choosing to respond to your humanity with humanity instead of with hatred. The slave who became free didn't do it by punishing himself for being enslaved. He did it by recognizing that his freedom had always been internal, always been up to him, always been waiting for him to claim it. Your freedom from this internal trial is the same kind of freedom. It's not something you earn, it's something you choose. But how? How do you stop a trial that's been running for so long you've forgotten what life was like before it started? Epictetus has an answer. Make it your business to know yourself, which is the most difficult lesson in the world. Start by noticing the voice of your internal prosecutor. When it starts building its case against you, when it starts listing your failures and calculating your debt, just notice it. That's not your voice. That's just a habit of thought that you've mistaken for wisdom. Then ask yourself, what would I say to a friend who had done what I did? And whatever your answer is, that kindness, that understanding, that compassion, offer it to yourself. Not because you've earned it through sufficient suffering, but because you're a human being, and human beings deserve compassion when they're struggling. Epictetus once said, "Don't be ashamed to need help. Like a soldier storming a wall, you have a mission to accomplish. And if you've been wounded and you need a comrade to pull you up, so what? You've been wounded by your own internal battle. Let yourself be helped, even if the help is coming from your own capacity for self-compassion, especially if it's coming from there. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It doesn't mean pretending your mistakes don't matter. It doesn't mean becoming careless about the impact of your actions. Moving forward means carrying the wisdom you've gained without carrying the weight of endless self-punishment. Epictetus understood the difference. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You can react to your mistakes with wisdom, learning, and a commitment to do better. Or you can react to them with self-abuse, shame, and the kind of exhaustion that makes future mistakes more likely, not less. The person you hurt doesn't need you to punish yourself. They need you to be thoughtful enough not to hurt them again. The trust you broke doesn't need your guilt as payment. It needs your consistent actions over time to rebuild it. The mistake you made doesn't need your eternal suffering as penance. It needs your commitment to the growth that prevents similar mistakes in the future. This is what accountability actually looks like. Not self-punishment, but self-responsibility. Not endless guilt, but enduring change. Epictetus spent his life teaching people the difference between what serves growth and what serves only suffering. Now you get to choose which one you'll serve. Imagine what your life would look like if you stopped being your own prosecutor. If you use the energy you spend on self-punishment for self-improvement instead, if you channeled the passion you feel for justice toward actually making things right rather than making yourself suffer, if you treated yourself with the same compassion you offer others and watched how that compassion radiated out into every relationship, every interaction, every choice you make. Epictetus once told his students, "You are worthy of respect not because you are perfect, but because you are capable of growth." You have grown from who you were when you made those mistakes. That growth happened in spite of your self-punishment, not because of it. Now, imagine how much more you could grow without that weight, how much kinder you could become without practicing cruelty on yourself, how much stronger you could become without spending all your strength on internal battles that serve no one. The trial is over. Not because you've been found innocent. Innocence was never the point. The trial is over because you've remembered something important. You are both the judge and the defendant in this courtroom, and you have the power to declare the proceedings closed. Epictetus died as he lived, free in the ways that mattered most, despite being constrained in the ways that mattered least. He never owned property, never had wealth, never held political power, but he owned something more valuable than all of these: the freedom to choose his response to whatever life brought him. You have that same freedom. The freedom to choose your response to your own humanity, the freedom to meet your mistakes with wisdom rather than punishment, the freedom to let yourself grow rather than forcing yourself to suffer. 2,000 years ago, A broken slave taught students who had every advantage he lacked, and his central message was this: your circumstances don't determine your freedom. Your past doesn't determine your future. Your mistakes don't determine your worth. What determines all of these things is how you choose to think about them, how you choose to carry them, how you choose to let them shape you going forward. The echoes of his teachings have traveled across centuries to reach you in this moment, carrying a simple truth. You are not your worst moment. You are not your biggest mistake. You are not the person your harshest internal critic says you are. You are someone worthy of the same compassion you would offer anyone else who was struggling to be human in a complicated world. These are the echoes of Epictetus, and they were always meant for you.